Chandelier Chardin is a 38-foot spiral of glass with an antique Venetian chandelier sort of hung in the center of that spiraling cone. It has hundreds and hundreds of pieces. Just about every technique, every glass technique is used. They're cold cut, sandblasted, slumped, fused, torch blown. You know, the story and the form comes first. It usually comes in a very whole manner in my head of what's going to happen. Then I go to materials. Then I go to techniques. It's an important thing for me to see and hold whatever that vision is, but it's also an equally important thing that the artisans that are working with you have the respect for that vision, that they hopefully see it too, and that they work it physically. They're the ones that are working on it for months and months and months and months.
Sometimes you can't get, when you get an angle cut like this, you can't get it all, always. Or sometimes I'll just slam it on the table too and just edge it so it comes right out. These are the vinyl stencils used as the resist that go on the glass after I've cut it. This is what resists the sandblasting material and what will create the definition in your shapes when you're trying to go for your 3D.
So this one will give you an idea of a smaller piece, sandblasting it inside the booth here. So as you can see, I frosted this whole side. Now we'll flip it over and do the dark areas on the back. See, I think that's about it. The clear lines give your differentiation between all of your mediums and lights. And then you can see this nice light shade that we just barely speckled on there. And you can see it come through quite a bit.
One down and 440 to go. There's a little collet that goes in the end of the tubing that holds the glass on, and then this is what the glass actually goes into.
The chandelier goes from 18-inch pieces, which are about this big, down to the last bead on the chandelier is 2 millimeters, which is about a 1/12 of an inch.
I think this rock crystal is blending in.
Yeah, that one.
And I think it helps us a little bit with the color with the antique stuff so that we're mixing.
Right.
You know, and
So we don't
the
have
fused
all-
glass and the boro, they definitely have different colors, but it's not bothering.
What we're doing here is looking in the kiln at some pieces of glass that are up around 1600 degrees. These pieces are going to be used on the lower tier of the chandelier, although we've done all the tiers had slumped glass throughout them. Okay.
What, it's only 1400
I know, yeah, that was only 1600 degrees.
Is
coming
that
out
what it
there.
was
Yep.
when you opened it?
Now they're working on these wonderful pieces. They're actually blown, actually torch worked, and completely organic. Because if they get too complicated, then they're going to upstage all those other pieces that have. You know, it's almost like all those flat pieces have got to like just sort of become liquefied. You know.
Well, let me get a flat one in here. Do another process.
Try.
And then we can twist some of these
Yeah,
too if
yeah.
you want to. But let me do.
Yeah, see what you can do with sort of a morphic.
I work in many different materials, so it's very important that I work with craftspeople and artisans, and that they're willing to stretch their own selves and their own limits in order to achieve the work that we do. So we were in good hands there.
But see, that's nice. That's nice because, again, it's something you wouldn't get in a slump.
Right.
You know?
Lonnie incorporated the old arms from Italy that were from a century-old chandelier. This is the center core basis of the chandelier design.
we came upon a shop and we said, "What's that?" And he took us in and he said, "This is an upside down Christmas tree that dates back to..."
The Napoleon era. So the chandelier was made in Venice around the time of Napoleon.
Yes.
We had it shipped back and it was stored in Denver for what? I mean, 23 years.
20-some years. Terrible.
Never been hung, just moved around from warehouse to warehouse.
Again, it was through a lot of experience and careful planning that we were able to use as many old parts of it as we used. We used most of the parts. Well, it was very frightening to work with such old materials and the contemporary materials in a construction site. There were some real close calls. Very delicate balance of knowing how hard to, how you can push glass and how you can't push glass, and getting it to all fit very, very precisely. It has hundreds and hundreds of pieces. I was very blessed to have John Abbott of Bella Glass did all what we would call practical engineering or shop engineering, because every piece had to have safety features very often. Every piece had to be attached to another piece without vibrating or without shocking. And each piece was a different size, different shape. It's been really nice when people, unbeknownst to the story or unbeknownst to the background, have seen the piece and said, "Is this about evolution or is this about progression?" This was inspired by a man that I had done some illustration about, Chandler Chardin, who was a Jesuit priest and paleontologist. And his work was the idea that geological, biological, and spiritual evolution could coexist, and that you went from geology to biology to newness, or spirit. And so the chandelier is built that way. It starts geometrically and becomes bionic, and then hopefully becomes spiritual by the time you get to the end, which ends in the center of the labyrinth. I mean, as a maximalist, I always design at least a couple of layers that I don't believe are visible to the naked eye. Or there's a lot in that chandelier that would take a pair of very strong binoculars to see. But that's the point, because if it's not bigger than one viewing, that doesn't do anything for me, because that doesn't leave any room for mystery, and it doesn't leave any room for seeing something different. So yeah, I hope yeah, there are a lot of things contained in there, in its geometry and in its progression. It's all complicated enough that I hope that, you know, people could look at it in many different ways, and especially if you're like working in that place and you walk by it every day. You know, I would hope that as the seasons change, something's going to light up differently. You know, something's going to move differently, and that's what keeps something alive, I think.